welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around.
Oh, yeah, the names have changed. How are you, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Hey, Ira. So, I was raised in Brooklyn, predominantly. I went to Brooklyn with my parents when I was about 5 because I was diagnosed with asthma and I lived in Far Rockaway. And the dampness was not good for me. So, my parents weren't going to go to Arizona. So, we went Brooklyn. That was the answer, I guess. Hey, Will. And it was interesting because I was always around Bensonhurst, I remember. We moved a lot in the beginning. We were on, I think, West 6th Street off Kings Highway, and then went to West 8th Street in 1968. Not too far away, right off Avenue S in High Lawn, and then settled in on Coney Island Avenue, which I was in my late teens, early 20s. And that was more kind of like Gravesend, Sheepshead Bay-ish. But the real memories come from Shorehaven, which after Nostrand Avenue, 20th Avenue, and that was from 1973 to 1979. That's where I worked in a candy store that was owned. There is the candy store, but this was taken much later. I worked there. Ralph and Shorty Spiro, gangsters, owned it. Angelo Seppi from Goodfellas used to come in it. I knew him. I met Henry Hill. And it was crazy back then because there was a social club every couple of blocks. And usually when you were hanging out as a 13 or 14-year-old, you're walking the streets with your friends. At least back then, that's what you did. There weren't 7-Elevens to hang out in front of, Dunkin' Donuts. We weren't doing that stuff. We'd hang out in the park or in front of our building. I lived right around the corner, those buildings you see behind, but down towards Short Parkway. In fact, I lived there when Son of Sam shot Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Valenti. It was about 6 blocks from my house. And I remember the next day going there with my friends, all police tape and all that. That was off Bay 16th and Short Parkway, right on the side of the Bell Parkway. I lived right over there. But I just remember it being so different. 1973, 1974, the place where I lived, Shorehaven, was moderately incomed, wasn't high income. And you had Hispanic and some African American, not many, but you had a lot of Polish and Hungarian and stuff like that, and Italian and Irish. And I had quite a bit of friends. Bicycle rides down 86th Street where they show in the Welcome Back Cotter. 86th Street was iconic. That's where Saturday Night Fever was filmed. 20th Avenue and 86th Street. Lenny's Pizzeria, where John Travolta gets the slices and puts them together. Across the street on 20th Avenue, right across the street was Shirt Town. That's where he went in and got the shirt, and he put the deposit on it. Phillips Dance Studio, where he was practicing. I went there. It was on 65th and Bay Parkway. Me and my friends took lessons, $2 a shot, when we were about 15 or 16. And it was just a different world. Now, around Shorehaven, that's Bath Beach. And Bath Beach, Gravesend, Bensonhurst, within 3 miles. It's like it encompasses 3 miles. And then if you want to go another 3 miles, you'll hit to the west, you'll hit Bay Ridge. So it was just a time that was much different. Everything was cheap. We found things to do. Cropsey Park, which was 21st Avenue, a block and a half from me. We hung out there. I played hockey, baseball, whatever there. And it was just a much different, yeah, it was a much different time. I remember when the Lufthansa heist happened. It was Christmas time around 78. I wasn't working at the, it was called Shore Rest at the time, that deli. It was a luncheonette, really. And I was walking around, and there was locks on the door, feds all over the place. They were breaking up the floor. They were looking for the money. They were in the basement. People were locked in the place. I remember that. My first bookmaker was over on 18th Avenue when I was about 16 or 17. Walked into the club, made my cash bet on a Sunday with a couple of my friends, sold football tickets in high school. You know, you had the real Italian American experience. As I got older, when I was in high school, a good friend of mine lived right next to Carlo Gambino on Neck Road in Ocean Parkway. Before he had his house in Massapequa Park, he kept that house in Brooklyn. He was there during the day. And he used to give my friend's mother or father, whatever, vegetables from his garden. And I met him a couple of occasions. He actually went to my friend's communion, but I didn't know my friend at that time. I met my friend in high school. And I heard some stories. Just a quiet old guy that always had like 5 people around him. But went to Lafayette High School, played baseball for Lafayette. Just a different world. I remember going to see Saturday Night Fever in 1977. Now, when I was in high school, I used to take the bus. It was about a mile away, my high school. Well, and this one time, I didn't take the Bath Avenue bus. Something had happened. So I took the train from 25th Avenue or whatever it was and got off at 20th Avenue, 86th Street, right where they filmed Saturday Night Fever. And there was a big trailer there, and they were filming the movie. And I didn't know. And then I found out later that was the movie they filmed. And 2001 Space Odyssey, or Odyssey, was the club on 16th Avenue, I believe in the 60s, or 13th Avenue, where he danced. I think that was it. His Crazy Country Club. It was either 16th or 13th Avenue. But it was amazing. An amazing time. I remember the snowstorms in 78, the blackout in 77, Son of Sam, like I said. I remember being in a social club. And my friend's father used to hang out there. And the cops, the local cops, during Son of Sam, went to some of the wise guys in the area and said, if you find him first, just leave the gun under his body unloaded. Like they were pretty much telling the wise guys, if you get him, get him. Just make sure the gun's not loaded and leave it under so we know it was him. They're asking the mob for help. Hey, Brooklyn. Shore Haven, yes. Shore Haven was just amazing, amazing. Me and my friend Scott used to babysit for Leah Remini. Leah Remini was from there. The kid from Barney Miller used to walk around. The heavyset kid. He lived near New Utrecht High School. You lived in a book. It was like you were part of a book. And, you know, the characters that I met coming in and out of a luncheonette, you know, you read about Shorty Spiro, who was a boss. I had a problem with a girl. I was like 15. And he took me to lunch and talked to me about it. His brother on the corner started renting out mopeds, $5 for 35 minutes. He had about 5 or 6 of them. And I remember I could get them from him. And I had just turned 16. So kids that weren't quite 16 I'd rent them out for 10. And I'd make money on it until one broke down. And Ralph had to go with his car, and he found out it wasn't me. Yeah, John Cassis. Yeah. Yeah, Brooklyn. Yeah. I used to babysit for her. Yeah, PS200. Yeah. She used to stand in front of the mirror with a hairbrush. You always knew she was going to be a star, that kid. Hey, Foo. Her mother was a little odd. Her mother worked. We watch her from like 3:30 to 4:30 or 5. And then her mother was nice. Yeah, Leah was quite a character. Actually, I ran into her. Must have been in the I don't remember, late 90s. I was probably in my late 30s at Cafe des Artistes, a restaurant Upper East Side, and she surely remembered me, and she was cool. Nice girl. You always knew she was just a vibrant character. Yeah, my sister went to PS200. My sister Adeline, my late sister, knew her. Yeah, Johnny lived on Bay 49th, across from Lafayette. And his brother passed away a few years ago. His brother James. Johnny, yeah, I played on his team. Johnny was funny because he played Little League, Gil Hodges Little League, and all that. And when Darryl Strawberry hit a 3-run homer to beat Johnny, his brother left the strawberry shortcake on his doorstep. James was a nice guy. Passed away. Was with the sanitation department. But so many. Benny DiStefano also. Benny played for the Pirates. He played first base and pitched. Benny was a good guy. He coached for the Cyclones about 10 years ago. But and he played the Genie in high school. The Sing productions, the productions they put on in May or whatever it was, April. King Tut was big in '79. Steve Martin, and Benny played the Genie with the outfit. Brooklyn, yeah, it was great. When I was there, Speedy ran the place. Ralph Spiro, Shorty would hang out. But yeah, King Tut was '79. It was interesting. I never thought Benny would do anything like that. Well, Benny was a little full of himself, but he was a good guy. We used to go to John's Deli, live there for lunch. But Bensonhurst, Bath Beach, that little area was just really incredible, because you were stuck in a place where they ended up writing about, movies about, and it was such an iconic place. Now, when you look back, like I always thought, like you look at presidents, right? 50 years later is when you know if they were good or not. You never know anything right away. It takes time for things to happen after it, and then you realize you put in perspective what your life was. Food, John's Deli was great. Wednesdays they had the special, like eggplant parmesan. I think it was like $2.85 or something. Yeah, right there, John's Deli. Then later on in the '80s, there was a Nathan's, a Roy Rogers on the corner. I used to go to White Castle all the time. Brooklyn, it was Yankees. Absolutely, you're right. It was Yankees. All my friends, Scott Seidman, who was the head of Little People of America Association. I'm going to get him on here one night. We did a great show. Scotty, I'm going down. I don't know if it was 2nd Avenue or 3rd Avenue. Scotty was Jiggle in the Christmas play at Radio City. and he sees Tony Bennett in the middle of the street. And I'm driving down with him. He's going, Tony, get in the car. Tony was trying to get a cab. It was raining. And he was fighting with these two blonde girls who were getting in a car. It ended up being his daughters. We didn't know that at the time. Tony Bennett gets in my car. Scott says hi, because he was performing at Radio City. And he said, do you mind if I smoke? I said, no. He lit up a joint in the back of my car. I think I took him to the Chevy Netherland. I think that's where he was staying. I drove him there. And he left us tickets when we didn't go. And he asked Scott, how come you didn't go? Like, he remembered. He was drunk. We didn't think his hairpiece was falling off. We didn't think that he would remember. But, yeah, Bensonhurst was, like, great. I remember I used to go to Pastels. You know, I knew Ali Shades very well, his family, which ran it. And, you know, there was Hadaz and Ernie Barry's was for the older people. My band used to play at Pierre's, and in the 80s, we just it was a different life. You grew up in the movie. Any movie that you see, whether it's Will DeMeo, whoever is doing a show, right? Joe D'Onofrio. It is what you see. No other time goes back better than if you're trying to do an 80s movie and go back and make it look like 80s Bensonhurst. It's just incredible. Bensonhurst, Bath Beach, Gravesend was just a place that had a pulse of its own. Now, a lot of people didn't come into the area because, you know, if you went to a club and you happened to look at the wrong girl, you know, you could have a problem. Now, I used to go to after hours when I was in my 20s. Sheepshead Bay over Randazzo's. There was an after hours. There was one on West 6th Street, Kings Highway. I forget what it was. Desiree, I think it was called. And you'd see wise guys in those places. Used to hang out at El Greco, Del Rio, Tiffany Diner in Bay Ridge in the 80s. There was so much going on. The first death I ever really experienced, my friend Anthony Colombo's brother John was a couple of years older than us. Used to hang out at the luncheonette. Used to ride motorbikes and stuff. In the garage, Brooklyn. I think it was the garage that would be right where the cutout is on 20th Avenue, where you can walk straight through to 21st. The garage right there. This kid John was about 18. We were 16. He was wild. He stole the police scooter with his friends and piled on. And a couple of times the guard would chase him off. This time the guard was drunk and shot him in the head. And we all ran down to that garage. By the time I got there, his body was gone already, but you could see blood dripping into the big square drain. And that guard never came back. God knows what happened to him. Yeah, right. They called it Bensonhurst, but it was Bath Beach. And I remember 1976, the 200th anniversary. What was it, the 100th? 100th anniversary. The bicentennial, whatever they called it, the centennial. I worked in that candy store overnight. Ralph Spiro had this idea that everyone's going to come see the boats and everyone's going to get a lot of foot traffic because it's a block away from the water. All night I worked there from I probably started about 8 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning. I think 10 people came in. But I got the chance to talk to Ralph, who he never seemed like he liked me. Like, you know, I would go in the back and read the paper. Don't read the paper unless you're buying anything. You know, he's probably hungover half the time. Until his brother Shorty, who was the boss, the big shot, who just used to come in there. Ralph was partners. He saw Shorty like me, and then Ralph liked me. But after that night of spending time with him, he treated me differently after that. 200 years, yeah. Oh, you're welcome, Brooklyn. Yeah, I'm from the area. It was it'll never there will never be any neighborhood like there was in the 80s. Again, I don't care where you are. But Bensonhurst, people that grew up in Bensonhurst, Bath Beach, Gravesend, there was a different texture. It's like walking through the city. You can almost cut the air with a knife in the summer. You hear different music every block. Halal stands and whatever, conga drums. That's the way Bensonhurst was, but it was all Irish Italian, pretty much. You had the Bay Parkway Boys. I remember I was 15. 14. I got shot in the leg. There were wars between Marlboro projects, and I went to Cavallero. I got thrown out of Cavallero for punching the principal in the face. And we went to see our friend got beat up, and we went to Marlboro projects, and everyone's fighting. And I didn't even hear the shot, but my leg hurt, and I was in the square part where the parking lot is, and there were garbage bags there, and I almost tripped over one. I thought I tripped over it, and I see blood going down my white tube sock. I got shot in the shin. My friends took me to Coney Island Hospital, and they asked what happened. I said, well, I was walking down near the Marlboro projects, and they believed it because everything was happening at the Marlboro projects at that time. Yeah, I got shot in the shin, and I told my mother, I was just walking because she got called. I was under 18. But I still have the scar. But, it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, 200, yeah, the bicentennial. It was just a crazy, crazy time. Anything went. You had my friends, Bubsy, his brother John, we all hung out there. I remember Arthur Bopp and Dude and Clayton and all of us. Billy Bright, who ended up being in Roy DeMeo's crew. Billy Bright used to hang out there. Tommy Karate used to come in. I remember Tommy Karate must have came back from Japan like in 76 or something. So because he had just gotten back from Japan in karate training. He lived down 20th Avenue. And used to see him come. He had a very high-pitched voice, I remember. He was nice. He used to hang out with this guy, Tommy Carbone. But, these guys from Babbles to Joe Goods, Alley Boy used to come in there. Alley Boy was nice. Used to come in with a black leather jacket. And I saw him dressed up once in a suit. I couldn't believe it was him because I was always used to the leather jacket. All that. But great times. Growing up in Bensonhurst, like I said, you knew what a social club was early on. Early on. Because anywhere you walk, you'd pass it. Or you'd see them sitting outside when you're on your bike. And then as you get older, they know you or know of you for a few years because they've seen you grow up. They've seen you from the time you're 11 on a bike. Now you're 16, 17. And it was a world within its own. And Brooklyn can tell you that. Sweet cherries? No, fool. Hey, guy. Yeah, well, Brooklyn's changed. Well, Brooklyn now, you walk through Bensonhurst, you think you're in Euro Disney. You can't understand a sign unless you read Russian or Chinese. But it's changed. But 86th Street back then, it took you an hour to get from 18th Avenue to where Angelo's was, 25th Avenue, the pastry shop, because there were beach chairs outside. On the air, people are honking horns. And, there's a light every block. It was incredible. I remember Record Hut was there. Guy Vinny owned it. I used to work in that candy store on 20th Avenue. Right near High Tulip. In 1965? So wait, crime was bad in the early 60s there? I wasn't there, really. I was a baby. I didn't recognize it. Really, guy? I actually lived near Lynbrook, Far Rockaway. Not far. I was near Oceanside until I was like 5 or 6 or whatever. I remember the last memory I have of Far Rockaway / I always thought it was Oceanside until someone told me I didn't live there. They were garden apartments. And I remember with a bunch of little friends, all 5 years old, climbing in the first floor window. It was a vacant apartment. I don't know how long I was in there. I don't think I touched anything, honestly. I think I just walked around. Came out, and about no exact 5 minutes later, the fucking house blew up. I hope it wasn't me that put the gas on, but I wouldn't think that would happen. We probably left the window open. And all fire engines coming from the back of the complex on the grass. And my sister had PTSD for years. Fire engines. It's a true story. I can only imagine if we were there 5 minutes before, right? 5 minutes after. But yeah, all my great memories, the car wash on 18th Avenue. I remember I was 15. I was taking Shorty's Mercedes to get car washed. Didn't even have a license. Yeah, I was heartbroken over this girl. She lived in Shore Haven, the 21st Lane. And you'll like this, Brooklyn. I used to wait for her to call me. 14 years old, 15. Heartbroken. 4 years later, 5 years later, I run into her at Toys R Us. She's working her way through college. And she goes, "Oh, we have to get together. Let me give you my number." I said, "It was this easy?" I said, "For 5 years, you're tormented. This is how easy it was?" We went out. Nothing happened. But it was just interesting. When you're 13, we went to Phillips Dance Studio on 65th. When John Travolta made the movie, it was $2 to go take hustle lessons. And the guy that was in the movie that plays the dance studio guy was Disco Tex. If you ever hear that song, Disco Tex, Get Dancing, that was Disco Tex. That's who played that part. And it looked exactly the same. He used to go up the stairs, right off 65th near Gannon Tire. And it was just amazing. New Dynasty was the Chinese restaurant on 20th Avenue across from the candy store. We used to go there for combination plate $5.25. I think it was less than that in the 70s. I was going there a lot in the 80s, not the 70s. Pino's Pizzeria on 21st Avenue in Bath. They found him in a trunk. He was at the Pizza Connection. Brighton Beach, Bath, sure. Absolutely, Phil. I used to hang out as I got older, Rosales on Avenue X. My friend was Tommy Lombardi. His father over there, Sally Dogs, ran the place. Used to hang out at Rosales. There was a lot of, in the 80s, a lot of those satellite places were going up to bet horses in the house. You'd see a big satellite dish. It was probably like an eyesore. The cops knew you were satellite. Who had a satellite dish back then? If you had that, it was to get the horse racing. You couldn't get it like cable now. Back then, they had WHT and HBO. That's all they had. So if you saw a house with a big dish on, it was probably a bookmaking joint. But I used to go to Avenue X and like East 26th. There was a club there. I used to bet football in the 80s. 18th Avenue and 85th. Avenue U. Right next to John's Deli, there was a social club. Harry Black. I don't think he's probably gone now. Harry would be 95 now. Two doors over from John's Deli was a social club in the 70s and 80s. Everything changed. There were so many social clubs. Guys sitting outside with pinky rings and all that. A different world. But it was a fun one because it was our world. Like, Brooklyn's younger than me, and he'll tell you. Brooklyn indicated that. It's just a different type of setting. I feel like the invisible man. Every time I do this, I disappear. But he's right. There were a lot of Yankee fans. Shore Haven was all Yankee fans for whatever reason. I was one of the few Met fans. That's a good point, Brooklyn. That's true. Yeah, that is true. Everyone was a Yankee fan. It's interesting. I remember the Louima thing. Oh, what was his name? I forget. The Avenue X. I remember that in the 80s. I remember getting thrown out of Caballero Junior High. My mother was called up to say something, to talk about me. And when she was walking out, the guy said, "What a pushy broad." I turned around and punched him right in the face. Hugo Rosiello. That was the name of the principal. It ends up 10 years later, I meet this guy I start hanging out with my friends. That's his step uncle, Hugo Rosiello. And he goes, "Yeah, he was a dick." So I had to go to Brooklyn Academy Prep all the way down Stillwell Avenue for 1 year. That's why I ended up going to Lafayette in 9th grade, because that only went up to the 8th grade. And I started Lafayette in 9th grade, not 10th grade. But Lafayette was great. Lafayette was great. That whole area, you could, in the summer, the handball courts on this corner, Bay 25th and Cropsey, they sold a lot of pot in the 70s. My friends, I was never into smoking pot. But it was just a different time. You almost thought, now that you think back, you think you're remembering a movie. Like, if I think back to my life back then, and I still have friends, a couple of them in prison, but that were from there. You think that you were involved in one of these movies. Like, you watched the movie Bensonhurst, or whatever the movie is, with the Mayo, all these movies, and you remember. Larry and Victor Lee. Not sure. Trying to think. Late 70s? Late 70s was great. Lafayette was a good school. There was never problems in Lafayette. The interesting thing was, we used to go to Spumoni Gardens, L&B, and the funny thing is, not funny, but, Marlboro projects, a lot of African Americans and all that. A couple of blocks away from Avenue U, you'd never see one African American shopping on Avenue U. A couple of blocks away, you'd never see one. Things were more segregated, and in Bensonhurst especially. It was just a different time. The 80s became a little more progressive, but you got to remember, in the 70s, I was a teen in the 70s. So I wasn't going to the city to dance clubs and stuff. So I was really in Brooklyn. I was in my area. There was nothing else I could do. When I got into my 20s, I was in a band. I worked security at Shout, the China Club. I ventured out, and I was more in the city. But Bensonhurst, that was my teenage stomping ground. And, you learned about death. I remember a friend of mine who was a few years older than me, Clayton, got shot to death near Oliver's Bar. Brooklyn, I don't know if you know where that is, Oliver's Bar. He was a tough guy. The next day we found out he got killed. I remember when Ralph Spiro was killed. I was in Florida. It was around Valentine's Day, 1980. And when I came back with my family, found out that he had gotten killed. And then a year or two later, his brother disappeared because they were afraid that he would take retribution. In fact, Ralph had a big problem with Sammy Gravano. Gravano used to come into the club, into the place. Not a lot. He used to come to see Angelo Seppi and Tommy Spiro. Tommy was Shorty's nephew, which he was in the Rampers. That's Ralph's son. And I remember Tommy had a chocolate brown Mark Continental, and Ralph had the big Continental, the mauve color, the pinkish. It was big then. Shorty had a Benz. Shorty actually lived in the Southampton for a while and then went to Massapequa. His daughter was gorgeous. But yeah, these guys, we read about them in books 20 years later. I really didn't quite know what was going on around me when I was a teen. I knew they were tough guys. I knew, yeah, this guy's a mobster, whatever. But I didn't know really. I figured I didn't watch The Godfather stuff, but I figured mobsters were, bookmakers, loan money. I didn't know about all the other stuff, right? So that's what you think. So it's harmless. When you're growing up and you think a gangster's just a guy that drives a nice car, and oh, he's just a bookmaker and loans money. You don't realize what else he's doing. So it's okay to you because you're not really that versed in it. As you get older and you see what goes on, then it's like, oh shit, really? But other than that, you just sidewalk stories, everybody has them. Growing up in the 70s in Brooklyn was a book. You're in your own movie. Because more so than anything else, if you watch Gravesend right now, the show, right? Or you watch Goodfellas, you don't have a guy in Iowa saying, oh my God, that reminds me of Joe. Or that character, oh my God, that looks like but if you're from Bensonhurst, I dare you to watch Gravesend without the first 15 minutes saying, oh my God, I know someone that was just like that. Or my friend dressed like that. Or I had those sneakers. Or you identify with Bensonhurst if you're an Italian. Really, Taylor. Unbelievable. Yeah, 86th Street. I'm trying to think. In the 70s, there was Newmark and Lewis. Jan's was in the 70s, 21st Avenue. Bunch of jewelry stores. Lester's, Joyce Leslie, Record Hut, High Tulip, Empress Deli on Bay Parkway. I found it about OTB on Bay Parkway pretty quick in my life. Yeah, 86th Street, I heard it's changed. I haven't been there in a while, Taylor. But I heard it's changed. It was all Italian. You had a couple of Korean fruit markets, but predominantly Italian. And, Angelo's Bakery on 25th Avenue. In the early 70s, there was a pancake house right where that vacant lot is on 25th Avenue across from Angelo's. It's like a lot. That was a pancake house. But you always ran into someone you knew. I remember the Bay Parkway boys were a gang. I really hung out with the Avenue U boys, even though I wasn't from Avenue U. And we had a big brawl with them at Cropsey Park. It started in Corvettes. And it went outside Corvettes, and then we ended up in Cropsey Park. And I was dating one of the Bay Parkway guy's sisters. And we actually got along because we went to school, St. Simon and Jude, together when we were like 8 or 9. So we kind of made a pact, like, look, any fight, I won't go after you, you don't go after me. I remember that. Yeah, Darlene Vesicchio. Pretty girl. And he ended up getting killed in a legitimate car accident when he was like 25, I remember, in the 80s. Yeah, on the Saginaw or something like that. No, not the Saginaw. Nichols Road out near Center Reach or Patchogue or something. And I was told, I found out later on he died. I didn't go, I wasn't close to him anyway, but I found out that they used to use that Nichols Road as a drag strip. And he wasn't dragging. And he got killed. Terrible. He was a nice guy. I lost contact with him, but he was a nice guy. 1485. I was at 8861. Hey, PWC. I was 8861. That was my building. Angelo Zeppi from Goodfellas, who got murdered in the basement right next to that. Angelo Zeppi got murdered, I think, in 81 or 82. He was part of the Tanza heist. I used to see him all the time. And he took, the laundry room, PWC, and then you have like the storage rooms down there. Angelo Zeppi had a deal with the maintenance guy, put a padlock on the door, and he used the maintenance room as a house. He had ferrets running all over the place, birds. He hated people, loved animals. Angelo's girlfriend, Joanne Lombardi, was like 19, and they killed them both. And Angelo was probably 40. He was like 5'2", Angelo. Always unkempt. But when he was straight, he was nice. He was a coker, but he was a nice guy. He was Shorty Spiro's nephew. I don't know which way, but he was Tommy Spiro's cousin. And I remember Ralph, there was this place, Hole in the Wall. It was right off Bay 20th in 86th Street. I had a bad car accident there. And Ralph was partners with Gravano in that place. And someone came in with a receipt. Around 1970, this happened. Came in with a receipt. And Gravano didn't see the stuff. Ralph was robbing him. And he wanted to go after Ralph. So Ralph came up with this story that a guy that recently died came up with a story that he saw Sammy trying to hit on her, a recent widow, which wasn't true. And they called Sammy in for that. But Shorty knew Ralph was, and he got a pass. And what they did was they transferred him to the Gambino family because they were with the Colombos, and they knew that, look, I think Shorty did say to him, look, I know my brother's a jerk off, but he's my brother. You can't do anything to him. And so they transferred Gravano. That's how he left. Because originally Tommy was in the Rampers, and that's how Shorty met Gravano. And in fact, Ralph always had a hard-on for that his brother thought more of Sammy than his own nephew, Tommy. But Tommy had a black afro. He was a womanizer. He wasn't a tough guy, Tommy. In fact, he owed me $3,000. The last I saw him about 20 years ago, he was balding in Sheepshead Bay. Looked nothing like the guy I remembered. He'd probably be around 77 now. I don't even know if he's alive. Howie was busting chops. What year was that, PW? Back in the day, the guys who used to hang out there, well, me and Bubsy worked there. My friend Bubsy, his brother John, Mike Benanti, Babbles, Joe Goods, Anthony Piazza, Mike Piazza. This is in the 70s. A lot of my friends lived, 21st Lane? When you make the turn, those buildings there. In fact, one of my friends still lives there, Rich Barecki. He's been there for 60 years. Richie Barecki. He's the building right, the last building on the corner when you're going toward the park, when you go around the circle. He's that last building. Rich Barecki, yeah. Known him a long time. Wendy Chin lived over there. You know who lived over there at PWC? Sam and Seth Levinson, the sports agents. I grew up with them. Ace, they're Freddie Peralta's agent. Sam and Seth, I know since I'm 12. They're in Florida now, but they became big sports agents. Seth started working for Peck and Walter and Peck as an attorney in the early 80s. And Sam was in Brooklyn College, and he used to send Sam to Florida to training camps. And Seth started a company with Paul Blair called Aces, which was a sports management. And then Walter retired and it became Peck and Levinson on Court Street. And then Seth went full-time to sports management. They were big Yankee fans. Oh, they loved Mickey Mantle. Well, Seth did. I don't know about Sam. Sam was more the people person. Seth was a little arrogant. So PWC, did you know Jimmy, the cook over at, he passed away a couple of years ago, about 45 years ago. Jimmy, the cook, I know Jimmy since 1973. He passed away, I think, 4 years ago in October. He was a good guy, Jimmy. The guy Val used to hang out there. You know a guy Val? Bubsy's friend. But things have changed. Unrecognizable. Gail's Bakery was right there. Miller's on the corner. The drugstore. We used to rob her. The lady couldn't see. She was like 80 years old, Coke bottle glasses. We used to rob her constantly. I was practically behind the register. They thought I was working there. She couldn't see so good. But that's unbelievable. Look, I'm not saying a men's shelter is not important. No one should be on the street. It's a terrible thing. But unfortunately, when you have shelters, there are problems. But yeah, I think homelessness is terrible. It's terrible. But I will tell you this much. It'll never be what it was. Nothing ever is. But it will never be what it was. We just hang on to our memories because that's all we have. And my memories of Bath Beach, I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. Because you can take the guy out of Brooklyn, but you can't take the Bensonhurst out of the guy. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you on the post game tonight. Mets hopefully will win 2 in a row. See you soon. Thanks.